So next we'll need bag 108 and bag 301. Bag 108 has the head plate assembly. So that contains the head plate, a wire routing bar, the hardware to attach that, and then bag 301 has the 2 ear servos. So we'll be attaching this head plate to the roll motor, but first we're going to put the servos onto the head plate. So we're going to take the servos, and you'll notice that one of them will have a red tag on it. And so that servo will go onto, if you're looking from the back side of the plate here where the threaded inserts are and it's flat, the right side is the red. And so just slide it between the 2 guides and align it like this. And then the other servo go on the other side. So we'll need to screw those down. Let's open up our hardware bag. So we'll have 2 M2 by 10 millimeter screws. So that one and that one. And then the rest of them will be M2 by 8 millimeter screws. And we'll have 6 of those. So what we're going to do first is we'll attach the top part of the servos. And to do that, we're just going to use 1 M2 by 8 millimeter screw on each servo. We'll go through the front of the servo and into the threaded insert in the head plate assembly. I'll just tighten that down for each of them. So next, we're going to attach the bottom portion of the servos, but we want to put this wire routing bar in place. So on the back side, we'll just align it like this, where these holes line up, and we're going to hold it in place. We're going to use the 10 millimeter M2 screws. So it'll come through front, and there's 2 threaded inserts here, so it's going to come through the first one, so I'll just go ahead and do that with this not aligned just until we see it just about to come out there. And I'm going to align this over it and continue to screw it in. That. And then I'll do the same thing for the other side. All right, so now you've got it with the bar in the back and the servos on the front. So now we're going to take this head plate and attach it to the roll motor. So first we'll make sure that we're in our 0 position here, these 2 lines aligned like that. And then we're going to attach this head plate to the servo horn using 4 M2 by 8 millimeter screws. And so you'll notice that these don't align the same as the actuator. We want, if we're looking at the assembly from the front, we want the head to be rotated to the right like this at the 0 point when we do this attachment. So kind of get that in place. Just start with one position. So this will be the top screw on the motor. So we'll just get that aligned and fastened a little bit. All right, and then let's go ahead and see if we can align the one that is straight across from it. There we go. And we'll go ahead and add the other two in. You can go ahead and rotate this to the straight up position. Make sure it's nice and tight. Now our assembly has the head plate on it. Okay, so we're going to set the neck assembly to the side. So next we'll need bag 109 and bag 302. So bag 109 contains just the front top, and bag 302 contains the front electronics assembly, which is already fully assembled and has these screws holding in this bar. So these are the screws that we're going to use to attach it to the front top piece. So go ahead and remove these screws. These are M2 by 4 millimeter screws, so they're very short. And we'll remove this bar. And then we want to take the front top piece and we'll turn it over. And then we're going to align this front electronics assembly like this. So you'll see that these two notches are at the front on this side of the assembly, and that the back aligns with this opening here. So once we have that snapped into place, and it should be a pretty tight fit, and you have this bar across the front, then go ahead and take this bar, and it's got these little holes in it so it fits right over that, and then we will fasten it with the two M2 by 4 millimeter screws. I'll go ahead and orient the part like this. Set that up here. So next we'll need bag 115, bag 306, and bag 307. Bag 115 has the printed parts and screws for the sensor mounts. And bag 306 is the IMU, and 307 is the capacitive touch sensor board. So we've got three parts here. We've got the spacer, we've got the IMU bracket, and we've got the MPR 121 cover. In our small parts bag, we've got several screws, and you also want to be careful because we've got these little transparent spacers, 4 of them. Let's go ahead and sort these out. So I'm going to put these little spacers over here. And then I'll divide our screws, 2 12 millimeter screws and 4 16 millimeter screws. I'm going to go ahead and take out the capacitive touch board. And we're going to mount it to the IMU bracket like this. Align these holes with these upper holes here. And you want the support to come out to this side. And then we're going to put the cover on the top. So we're going to sandwich it in between. So it'll be the cover, then the MPR 121 board, and then the IMU bracket. We're going to connect the MPR 121 cover through the MPR 121 into the IMU bracket using these two M2 by 12 millimeter screws. So it'll come through this cover, through the MPR 121, and into this threaded insert on the IMU bracket. So I'm going to just tighten the first one a little bit. And then I'll get the second one aligned. And go ahead and tighten these down. So now we've got this stacked assembly like this. So now I'm going to take the IMU and I'm going to take this top front part, rotate it over like this, and what we're going to do is we're going to be attaching the IMU here, followed by a spacer that will go here, and then this IMU bracket on top of all of that. And we're going to connect it all with these 4 16 millimeter screws. But first we want to put these little TPU rings below the IMU so that it doesn't make contact with this surface directly in a rigid way. So to do that, the screws are going to come up through this battery compartment. So one of the easiest ways to get this configured is we're going to insert these screws first, like this. Do this with each of them, and then we'll put the TPU ring around it and then stack on the components. But because we'll need to flip this over a lot, I'm going to just temporarily use a little bit of masking tape to hold these screws in place against gravity. I'll put a screw in, and then I will take a piece of tape and just tack it in place. Just temporary. Nothing super strong or anything. So let's just go ahead and get all 4 of these screws in here. And it can be a little bit difficult to reach into this enclosure, so you can definitely use tweezers to help with that. So I like to do an individual piece of tape for each screw, so I'll kind of progressively remove them. So now I've got all 4 screws just held up by tape. So I'm going to put these little TPU rings in place now. So I'll slide one down each screw. So next we will put the IMU in place. So it's going to just go over these 4. That. I'll sit down there. And then the spacer. So the spacer doesn't really have an orientation. It is tapered a little bit on one side. So I usually put that side facing up. Get that over all 4 screws. Slide that down. And now finally, we have our stacked IMU bracket and NPR 121. And so that's where these screws are going to thread into, just like this. So we're just kind of align them. And I'm just going to hold this like this. And I'm going to remove the tape for 1 screw, use my screwdriver, and just thread it just a little bit into this assembly I've got up here. And so then I'll do the same for another screw. And then the remaining screws. I'm just kind of leaving the tape on there while I get these going. Okay, so now these are all threaded. This is loose. So let's go ahead and just remove this tape. And now we'll go ahead and finish tightening these. So I'm just going to hold this against the part, and I'll tighten all 4 screws. All right, and that's what our assembly looks like when we're done. So next we're going to attach part 303, which is the power regulation module. So this module is fully assembled and it attaches with a single screw, which it's already got in place. So we'll just go ahead and remove this screw from the bottom. And this cap will come off too. And we've got this little notch. So we'll take our front top piece, flip it over, and we're going to align this notch here with this opening, just like that. So it aligns the edge here. Hold that in place, flip over to this side, and then we will take our cap and screw and attach it from the other side. So like that. Just tighten that down. We'll kind of just make sure we've got this aligned so it's good edge there, and then we can fully tighten this up.